Welcome to Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is the show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Today is a specially requested show asking how do we beat Ultra Chase Thanos. Now, I I'm in the middle of packing and doing a bunch of stuff, but since it's a special request, I'm not necessarily rushing through this, but I'm not going to say I have all the answers. There's some things that I've thought about. There's some things from the interviews that I've had, definitely with Brad Milburn. That's allowed me to think about Chase Thanos in a couple of different lights. And also looking at some of the matchups from Nats and some other matchups that's happened since then with Ultra Chase Thanos that's made me think about that figure a lot. So here we go. Let's get into it. And again, like I said before, I want to preface by saying, like, I'm not saying like, oh, here are all the solutions, rise, listeners, slay and eat. But I am sort of saying is that this is a hard matchup for a lot of teams. And if you're going into team design to specifically beat this team, there are certain tactics that work and there are certain tactics that don't work. And so I'm just going to try to break that down as best as I can. All right, so most of the time people are going to say, well, it's Chase Thanos and I have to beat Chase Thanos. And I think that's the wrong start of the play. The first thing that you have to realize is that a Chase Thanos team is usually Thanos unseen, floors and group combinations with the soul gem. So the main reason I have two floors and one group and a soul gem is that you have your leaderships and you're able to get walking woods. You're easily able to drop the group for more floors if you wanted to, or even drop the two floors for another group. The main reason I stay at 275 is that it allows you to bring in enough big boy IDs to actually do your team good. And the main reason I'm saying like big boy IDs is that you're going to be playing Storm at 150, pulse waving. You're probably going to be calling in Magneto now that he's legal at 125. Like all of these 5 point IDs that you just can't get around because there was not a student ID equivalent. And you have enough points. You have enough IDs at 5 characters to put in headmasters or wanted posters for the equivalent characters that you want. If you want, now two storms in there, you could do that. If you wanted full dial Iceman, you can do that. If you wanted top dial Wolverine or Cyclops, you can do that. So there's a lot of options that just come in, and I'm more speaking of as of right, now or more currently, versus like during the point in time of nationals. Okay, so this is usually the skeleton: two floors, one group, unseen, Thanos, and let's break it down. Why each of these things are there, and alterations that you can do. I know some people do not like the having a crap ton of 5 point IDs, so they'll add in the symbiote for unseen and then go with a couple of student IDs and then taper with their points. But this is the main skeleton that we're using. You can adapt that last 25 points however you like. Or if you're playing a deal with Thanos, you need to understand that last 25 points can be flexed in a bunch of different ways. But let's start off. Why the Soul Gem? Soul Gem is almost mandatory for Thanos because you're stacking the Ego Gem on top of Thanos, and you realistically want the Soul Gem so that he has a level of sustainability. The problem that happens with Thanos is that if he does not have his sustainability, he can be chipped down, and once he gets to click 5, his damage is awfully pitiful until well, actually, click 4, but uh, yeah, click 4, his damage goes down to 3, and then he doesn't go back up till 4 until click 8 and 9, which is a bit frustrating. Half his dial is 4 damage, half his dial is 3 damage, but again, he has the ego gem that he can boost up any of his stats, but more than likely, the two stats that he's going to be manipulating 9 times out of 10 are going to be attack and defense, more than likely defense than anything else. So, we have that, and then we also, like I said, you have the soul gem, and the soul gem is modifying the defense by +1. So Chase Thanos could be +2 defense for a lot of the game if he's able to get his soul gem, and that is the key element, is getting the soul gem. Now, it is possible for the Thanos game to evolve and not even mess around with the soul gem, and just drop it all together. That is possible. It does allow for some additional adaptations that are pretty good in my opinion, but it does leave you at a disadvantage, especially if you do win map, because functionally, like I said before, you could be +2 defense almost the entire game, so it can get real stupid real quick. All right. So we already know how Groot works, and getting Walking Woods gives Thanos the secondary attackers that he needs. The floras, of course, are the cheap spawn that you need to up your theme, but not only that, they can grow into like little monsters from what's that one, something pet shop movie, I forgot the name. Feed me Seymour. They can get real brutal. Can that happen consistently? Most likely not, but it can happen. I've had games where floras have just opened up a can of pollen on a person, and they're just stuck there, don't know what to do, dumbfounded. So, yeah. So the biggest core element that when we start to break down Unseen and we start to break down Thanos is this. So we start with Thanos with his range being 7, which is above average, because 6 is our average range right now. He doesn't have any movement attack early on, which means any deployment is coming either from an ID or he's getting carried by a Flora or Groot or something like that. He's not getting sashayed around, and he's not doing anything major himself. By not having any initial movement attack, depending on how a player is, I could see potentially people forfeiting the Ego Gem for Exospecs or something like that, just so that they can get hypersonic speed, charge, running shot on Thanos, just to put him in people's faces. Now, again, I don't necessarily recommend that, but since we are talking about dealing with this figure, we have to talk about realistic obstacles that could be appearing in the future and adaptations that could be appearing in the future. All right. The next thing that we notice is that with sidestep, it gives him more advantages for calling in IDs than it does for actually getting around and attacking. But because he has sidestep, he is constantly able to approach. The other element that when we start breaking him down is that his defense is higher on click 2, so more than likely to have a more, I would say, powerful turn. You're looking at trying to tag in the game before, or if you're trying to burst down Thanos, you need to try to burst down Thanos either before he gets on to click 19, or B, once he's on click 19, your goal is to like get him to next to last click, or get him down to at least invuln during that turn. Now, it seems like a lot to do because it is, but realistically, like, those are the things that you're going to have to do, because if you don't, you're going to be in massive amount of trouble because of Screet. Because Screet will just has a chance of upping the defense by 2. And if Screet ups the defense by 2, the statistical odds of you hitting with most standard heroclix are really, 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 really low. And that part is what is frustrating. And the reason why Thanos on click 2 is probably one of the most oppressive things in the game. You stack in both of his special powers. Yeah, that's really rough. Okay, so then we go into Unseen real briefly, and Unseen's major problem is that he has the rollouts. 4 through 6 plus a prob. 4 through 6 super senses plus the prob makes him like just a bear to deal with. He's able to get wherever he needs to go, and he has improved target, ignores elevated, ignores hindering, ignores characters, so he can see whatever he needs to see because he's a watcher. Or a watcher, human, hybrid, love baby, whatever you want to see him as. He's also able to penalize colossal retaliation, which adds another level of, I would say, advantage because, again, Thanos has Mystics. So if you hit Thanos and you want to trigger a Mystic, you want to trigger retaliation because of Mystics, well, guess what? Your attack is going to be -2 unless you take Unseen off the board. Now, Unseen's biggest liability is his 4 clicks, and that's really it. But he has the ability also to just go ahead and be stealth and then make his own hindering terrain when he moves. And so that is an advantageous situation. You combine Thanos' Perplex with Unseen's Outwit, and you functionally are able to strip down any power cosmic character that you like. But the big disadvantage is that, Thanos cannot see through stealth, where Unseen can see through stealth. And there are not a lot of quintessence and power cosmic characters that have stealth unless they have exospecs. And even then, with exospecs, more than likely, most of those characters are not picking stealth. So, also there's Nightbringer now. I take that back. Nightbringer actually opens things up a bit. So you might see one way of dealing with him is the Nightbringer ring, and I think that might actually be something worth looking at. So, what's our first tool that we're going to be looking at? It's stealth with the Nightbringer ring. So, it's not a hard counter, but you're able to at least, with a power cosmic or a quintessent character, limit Thanos' application of Perplex. So that's our first little note, and we'll write that down. Nightbringer ring. All right. And as I am looking for a couple of different things, some stuff fell. All right. So with that 1-2 punch, we're asking ourselves, well, how do we deal with Unseen? Well, to deal with Unseen is hard because first and foremost, more than likely, Unseen is going to be near Thanos, or surrounded by walking woods, or surrounded by floras. So getting a single target pulse wave, everybody's like, I do a single target pulse wave. And while doing a single target pulse wave sounds very, very nice, it's not guaranteed. Definitely, if the Thanos player has any level of experience, we could say is that if your opponent does open up for a mistake or creates a problem, then you can easily say, hey, here's the Banshee ID, and here's the Magneto ID, and the Iceman ID. So we're just going to write those down too. So we're going to try to pulse wave Unseen for 4 damage. So we have Banshee, Magneto, and Iceman ID. Okay, so we can add that into our toolkit right there. Banshee, Magneto, Iceman. Another thing that if we're starting to realize like, hey, positioning may be an issue, is we want to add in Force Blast. And a lot of times Force Blast gets overlooked because majority of the time it doesn't resolve into direct damage. But by being able to utilize Force Blast and knock a character back, we're able to clear up line of fire, creating a situation so we can create that single target pulse wave. Additional things that we might also want to look at is, I think it's the spin ring, and it's like spin ring, and there's another one that you could just place people. Or is spin ring is the knockback one. So, off the little bit of research here, yeah, spin ring is the placement, and I think is it incandescent? Nope, it's not incandescent. Influence is the Force Blast ring. Yeah, so spin ring and influence ring. All right, so we're going to add that to another list of options on there, because with the spin ring giving us the TK and the placement, we're able to just say like, hey, if we sort of realize in most of our encounters, it's more about moving one character over a square than it is about, removing a whole bunch of other people, or you feel like being able to TK away a game element is a lot easier or more preferable, then the spin ring is your buddy. If you're just like, screw it, we're going to frogman this sucker like we used to do in the old days, and send somebody out there to just force blast unseen out, then bam, influence ring is your friend. All right. So those are two things for us to just think about off the top of our head. And when we start like looking in particular at Force Blast, let's try to see less than 25 points. And Force Blast. Let's see what we get in modern age. Okay, so for less than 25 points, we really only have a handful of options. Most of those options are crap. One is an Emperor Penguin, which you've lost map to get that, so that sucks. Next up is the X-Student, and on that click, you have also TK. So for people that are reevaluating X-Men, this actually might be the saving grace that you've been waiting for, is to, like, how am I going to deal with Unseen? Bam, here you go, X-Student. Play him at 25 points, start thinking and looking at him as a character. There is also the Stegosaurus and Crimson Sage Pogs. Both of those are generally, both of those Pogs are generally accessible through, what's the Dino guy? Well, it's Iron Man, and there's Dino guy. It's not Stegron. Yeah, Stegron. That's it. So, all in all, we're not getting Force Blast for cheap. I think mainly because, for most teams, because mainly, I mean, who's thinking about it? If we're looking at that as a toolkit element, while you can make the argument, hey, Stegron is still there, the movement of 4 is really not that great. So unless you're going to be hyper aggressive when you have Stegron double power action, then you're sort of limited. And even at that stage, like once you start adding in a bunch of Pogs, getting in a single target pulse wave is a lot harder. So that is something to think about. So if we're going to deal with Unseen, the best thing that we can do is just pulse wave him for 4. If we try to do anything else, he has a chance of rolling out. If you say like, "Hey, I have precision strike," well, now he just has standard super senses. If you said, "I'm just going to swing on him," well, guess what? He's probably going to roll out because he has a 50-50 chance. Do you also have a character that is, a really good attacker? Oh, but it doesn't see through stealth, so you can't make that attack. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider about when you're dealing with Unseen and trying to take Unseen off the map. And when we do not take that seriously, we open ourselves up to a bunch of problems. All right. So, my main thought process, if we're trying to disassemble this Thanos team, is that we need to get Unseen off the map first. Mainly because if we're running any other sort of tactic like Kobik Trader, we do not want there to be another sort of ID battery that could come in and start messing with us, killing our trader, or God forbid, crippling our Kobik or killing our Kobik if we're running that sort of tactic. So we need to be very, very careful about what we're looking to use, what we're valuing, and our ways of disassembling this team. So, like I said, we need to pulse wave Unseen. The next thing that we need to be mindful of is getting too aggressive on the Thanos opens us up to to Walking Woods. And with Walking Woods, it can be a catch-22. And what I mean is this. Their ability to sidestep in and flurry is ridiculously powerful. If you do not take Groot off of the map first before you deal with the Walking Woods, he's just going to Colossal Retail and more than likely, goes without saying, make more Walking Woods. So our next thing we would want to say is, it's like, hey, we're going to go for, after we deal with Unseen, then we're going to deal with Groot. Okay, that's our next goal, and then after that, then we tackle Thanos. So, or better yet, is Groot, Walking Woods, and then Thanos. Now, there are a number of ways of dealing with the Groot. One, the easiest ways is just the Cyclops ID. Just perplex him up, call him in, kill Groot. Just be done with it. You can even make the argument that you can kill Groot before Unseen if you really want to, and that's fine. So boom, kill Groot. All right. I would also, you can do the Unseen Trader trick on Colossals. I think it's a waste. Unless that Colossal is like aggressively in your face. Like in the case of like multiple Tri-Sentinels. That's the only reason why like Kobik Trader is like good in that situation of taking out Colossals. Otherwise, I would not invest a Kobik Trader combination for that. All right, so let's break down Thanos. Let's look at a couple of things that we can do to Thanos to make his day ridiculously hard and difficult. The first and foremost, if we're going to put up in our list of solutions, is called Perma Barrier. That is a big, big, big tool. Now, the biggest thing about Perma Barrier is that, one, Thanos does not fly. Thanos is a grounded character. Number two, Thanos does not have any sort of improved movement. Thanos does not have phasing. Okay? Thanos doesn't have something that allows him to bust through walls, Kool-Aid Man the whole situation, and then start throwing up gang signs and sparking off his hands and shooting energy everywhere. So because of that, we can contain him easily. Now, in most cases, the types of maps that we may or may not be on are going to be outdoor maps because a lot of outdoor maps are popular right now. But let's just be honest. What is Thanos' friend? Open areas. What is Thanos' nemesis? It's like enclosed areas. Things like the hedge maze, maps that have, or WizKid's office, things that block line of fire that forces him to spend more of his turns busting down walls than actually taking shots. Almost forcing him to not be a range based character, but to be a melee based character. And that is one of the bigger problems with Thanos. So, let's sort of like turn it up a little bit. Why is permabarrier barrier a major tactic, and where are we looking at that at? Well, again, like the isolation area with barrier would allow you to approach. And it would also allow you to create a situation for a single target pulse wave on unseen if you're looking at that as an option. And also, if you just want to like force blast, like unseen against the wall, or constantly just keep doing that because your team can do it, then yes, then that is a option as well, to look at, just having perma barrier. Now, the con of perma barrier is that can you get your barrier characters in and out of position? And that's the most important thing. And so when it comes to, I would say, respectable cheap barrier, I would say X-Men is killing it right now with Iceman, because Iceman is 50 points, and I'm looking at him right now. He can be 100 or 50 points, and I would just recommend running him at 50 points and just throwing up barrier. And I don't see a loss. Like, you have hypersonic speed, 10 attack, 3 damage. That's 17 defense with your barrier, and just keep throwing it. And by keep being able to throw out barrier, it gives you an advantage with that alternating barrier. Is that you have 2 X-Men characters that if you're ever forced to push, you have other X-Men elements out there that can help you. Another thing that you could use, if you say to yourself, well, hey Edward, it seems that you're really pushing this X-Men 2.0 concept, maybe you would be like a little less unbiased on that, is just to run the zero ring. The zero ring gives you barrier. Now, the problem with the zero ring is that whatever other you still need to find another source of barrier, okay? And so that needs to be considered as well. So your zero ring can be really useful for your other theme teams. If you're, let's just say by chance, like your barrier is really expensive for your theme team or whatever. But that character is really good for multiple different things. So now you have the zero ring for the Thanos matchup, where now it's like, oh, okay, boom, there we go. I got double barrier. I got permanent barrier. All right. So boom, there's an advantage. So if we look for less than 50 points with barrier, where if I use the alphabet on first click, we don't have a lot. And again, I had to say it. Here comes this X-Men bias that I have. There's Polaris, which is prize support. She has barrier for X-Men at 50 points. There's Clara Prast for Runaways and Past, which actually is pretty good because she's 40 points. There is Rusty for Mutant Liberation Front, New Mutants, and X Factor. There's Commissioner Gordon for Detective, Gotham City, and Police. There is Green Lantern, Trouble Alert Green Lantern, one of my favorites. I like him a lot. Green Lantern Corps, Justice League, Super Friends. I actually would think that this is your best bet if you're looking at your overall utility. This figure is your friend. I've run him on a hodgepodge team with a Starro. I would definitely tell you, if you want to see A very interesting game. It's on Happy Little heroclix. Always glad to endorse him. There's a game, I think it's like Winter WKO's 2019. It's me and Lucas Van Hollen in the finals playing each other. If you want to see me lose, but also utilize that figure pretty well. Uh, then there is Nightshade, which I think also is a all around really good character at 50 points. So those are your options. And also Nightshade is mystical, and it's not too hard to get to Nightshades. And she also has a really good ability of getting herself and other characters like around and in position. So Nightshade, Green Lantern, Commissioner Gordon, Rusty, Clariplast, Solaris. Oh, and I forgot the new Pog OG, Lord Gaia. Can't forget Lord Gaia, who comes with Isaac. So now I think it's like Robot, Minions of Thanos, and something else. Give me a quick second. Uh, Eternal Minions of Thanos Robot. Yep, there we go. And he is a perplex, super senses, and perplex and super senses with his spawn in Pog powers. So that right there is very, very, very useful overall. Okay. So what are we seeing? At the current moment, which is all right. This barrier tactic is feasible. There are parts that we can utilize that don't necessarily put us back too much, and we're still able to tackle Thanos. But we're not done yet. There's a lot more things that we can do to try to deconstruct Thanos. So the first thing that we can definitely look at is just taking away his stat mods. So we can limit those down. And I think that's one of his bigger advantages. Like if we break down Thanos' advantages, because I'm going to be realistic, hardly anybody's ever going to play him at 130. There's no reason. There is zero reason to play him at 130. You are better off just 100% of the time playing him at 160. It's foolish. You do not gain enough in the current state to play him at lower points. So let's break this down. What other problems do we look at? Like, and again, going back to the stat modification. All right, so what are characters that we can look at for that? Well, honestly, any character with outsiders in modern age. It's an underutilized team ability. And for good reason. I think that as time has progressed, every time that we've needed outsiders in the game, they've been too expensive, and whenever they're reasonable and they're on good characters, we're usually in a swarm mechanic type stage of the game. So currently, there are only 4 characters with outsiders team ability proper that are legal. There were more, but you know how it goes, retirement. So there's Artemis at 100, and from Rebirth, nobody's playing that. There's Batman at 85 points. And again, probably more than likely no one's playing that, even though he's probably the better option. And then we have Red Hood, which gives us Batman TA in Outsiders, a 12 attack, 3 damage, energy explosion, 2 targets, 6 range, early on. And that's not bad. 6 clicks deep. Again, it's not bad. Is it rainbow magic great? No, it's not. But It's not bad, but it's usable. We have martial arts keyword, outlaws keyword, Batman family keyword. He has a trait which says sometimes I do things to annoy people. When Red Hood hits one or more characters after resolution, roll a d6. 4 through 5 hit characters modify attack by -2 until your next turn. Roll a 6. All hit characters modify attack by -2. Hold on, wait. A hit character versus all hit characters. Sorry about that. 4 through 5, a hit character modifies attack by -2, and then on a 6, all hit characters modify their attack by -2. Strict rule from Batman: no killing unless Red Hood is the only character on your force. When he would KO an opposing character with an attack, instead, that character is not KO'd and turn to their last non-KO click and heal Red Hood 1 click. Then he also has Dark Trinity. When Red Hood attacks, modify attack by +1 for each other friendly character with the Outlaws keyword adjacent to the target. You're really not going to pop that off too much. So you're probably primarily looking at the sometimes I do things to annoy people. Then you have Bizarro. Yeah. You have Bizarro, and he is probably like the most usable. And the main reason I say he's probably the most usable because you can easily equip him with a Nightbringer ring. You can easily equip him with Exospecs, and he can run roughshod off on some people and create some major problems. The issue that I see, with him primarily, unfortunately, is having Battle Fury means that he's going to be TK dependent. To be sent out early on. And with the Monster and Brute keywords, most people aren't going to look at him because Monster is dominated by Moby Dick. And I mean, it requires people to think differently. And we already know about heroclix players and thinking differently. So, is there a Neo Monster construct out there that could be played? Yes. Would it lose to classical Moby Dick monsters? Yeah. So, even though Moby Dick monster is not being played that much, would people even consider a new way of playing monsters? And the answer is no, until someone else proves it. Like, let's be honest. Okay? So, outsiders. Those are our options. And if we were really to rank them, Artemis is on the bottom, then Batman, then Red Hood, then Bizarro. So, yeah, that's the way I see it. So all these characters have the ability to just clamp down on Thanos and say, look, you're not going to get absurd with the stat deviation. You could perplex down my attack, but I can outsiders, you to make sure that your ego gem doesn't give you that +1 defense or that +1 damage or +1 attack range, or whatever Thanos needs at that moment. And so it becomes a lot more useful. Now, the problem with outsiders as well is that Thanos is just like, well, whatever, homie, I'm calling in this character, and Screet is going to sprinkle pixie dust on their head, and then they're going to believe that they can fly, and I'm going to hit them with the bolt of energy, in their temple. They're going to see a new reality, and now the character I called in is +3 damage, just because I can make it that way. So there's a limitation on outsiders mainly being useful offensively against your opponent versus defensively to protect you against what Thanos can do as an ID battery. But there is another option. So this next option, I feel, is a bit, I would argue, is the nuclear option. And I don't think a lot of people will play it. I don't think most people will even think about it. I think the only person that I've seen play this figure is actually PJ in his you can't do anything team. And the main reason I don't think that this figure is ever really going to be used to handle Chase Thanos is because it requires the player to think more statistically about their figures and your design and accept more than likely that you're not getting map, which restricts even more in different matchups what you can and cannot do. Now, on a local level, this isn't so much of a big deal as it is on a national or global level. And this figure is Mr. Terrific. And the LE Mr. Terrific, not the normal Mr. Terrific from the set. Now, why Terrific? Like there are a ton of other characters that I can look at as a option, or even try to bring up as a example. And a lot of people would say Mr. Terrific is a strong control with low survivability, and he does one gimmick really well. And so for the people that don't know the gimmick, let's go ahead and look at his trait. Terry taught me the importance of fair play. Characters can't modify a combat value positively or negatively by more than one. The rule of three specifically says the rule of three becomes the rule of one. Now, this messes with a lot of game mechanics, because you can't just go in and up your attack 2 or 3 times. You just can't use Range Combat Expert to up your attack twice. You only can up your attack once. Powers like Energy Shield and Combat Reflexes are at a huge disadvantage. Huge disadvantage when it comes to fighting Mr. Terrific. So you can't incorporate those 2 powers on your own team. Not only that, a Perplex, while useful for you, or multiple perplexes for you while useful, do not give you the offensive bump that it used to. So like passive effects like enhancement and power, end in power, are more useful to a degree because you can use your perplex on your attack modification, or your perplex to lower your opponent's defense by 1, knowing that is really all you can do to statistically manipulate the deviation. So functionally, you could say this. You have 1 perplex that lowers your opponent's defense down by 1, and they don't have any other base modifiers. Okay, and you up one of your guys' attack with perplex by 1. So the deviation goes down, the chance to hit goes down by 2. I mean, it's real simple math. Okay, but I, in most cases, would rather, with a tough to hit target, lower their defense down by 2 and increase the odds for my entire team to hit that character, versus trying to make it so that one character realistically has a better chance to hit than all the other characters. So when we're looking at Thanos, Outwit really doesn't help you. I mean, the only thing it really does is it allows you to come in and tell a Walking Wood, no, you don't get to use your movement power. And the other one is still creeping. Like, realistically. So that is a issue that has to be dealt with. And once Mr. Terrific is on the field, the Thanos player has every incentive to get downfield or get to wherever Mr. Terrific is, call in Cyclops, up his damage by one, and one shot Mr. Terrific. Like, it's the incentive is just there. So with Mr. Terrific not having that much utility to protect himself, I understand why a lot of people wouldn't even look at him. And that's also why, to a degree, I would throw out Outsiders before I would even talk about Mr. Terrific, because it would be more likely that you'll see someone run Red Hood before they run Mr. Terrific. And just most people do not design their teams nor play in a sense in which they can avoid using a lot of stat modification. I have to be honest, a good chunk of this game currently is about stat modification. Heck, it's been like that even before War of Light. Like, stat modification was pretty much the rage. So again, is this a viable character? Yes. Is this a viable option? Yes. Will people use it? The answer is no. The answer is no. It's too hard. There's too many things that you have to do in your team design that limits what you can and cannot do. Mr. Terrific globally hurts almost every matchup. I think the only matchup that it really didn't completely nerf was it's a PJ team. It's his Boomerang team. But even then, with the enhancements, it may nerf that just a bit from a damage output perspective. So we can see that this is just getting rough, like super rough. I'm trying to think if there was another character that limited your perplexes. Anyway. Now, so let's go to our next method of trying to deal with Chase Thanos. And realistically, I would argue that this is more of a limitation than it is like an actual check. It's a Sheriff Strange. Now, the main reason that we're looking at Sheriff Strange is that if Thanos is going to be an ID battery, we want to make sure that he's not lobbing nukes at us every turn for 2 turns in a row, taking a brief break and then doing it again. Because if he does, more than likely we're going to be wiped off the map. We want to create the pacing so that if he's going to be lobbing nukes at us, then he's going to have to do it every other turn. And this gives us a distinct advantage. If Thanos is looking at ID cards as his major form of offense. And this is primarily the case if and only if you win map. Because most of the time, Thanos can sort of wait. Thanos doesn't really have to rush. He can sort of wait. There's things that he can do to put pressure on the game. Like, once Thanos approaches midfield, you have to engage. And now I feel like you have more problems in most cases. Definitely if you have not scored anything. Like, if Thanos reaches midfield and you haven't scored anything, then yeah, you're in for a rough next few turns. Because he functionally has a global reach at that point. Okay. Let's talk about the perplex option. And the perplex option, I've muddled over the perplex option for a while, and I've thought about the perplex option from multiple perspectives. My problem with the perplex option, as I'm going to explain it, is still IDs. Okay, so here's the perplex option. You just perplex down his damage to 1 or 0. You just constantly perplex down his damage down to 1 or 0. And the only things on the force that could do anything are the walking woods.
and the Groot. So the floras sort of shamble around, and you can get around the floras if truth be told. All you have to do is just be like, boom, I go kill the Groot. Boom, I go and, if I, have an extra pulse wave, I pulse wave both the Walking Woods. I get them all off the board in the same turn. Now, with perplexing down, Thanos' damage down to 1 or 0. The only one that can call in IDs or do anything. I mean, sorry, the only one that can really. There's no one there that can attack. So now everything is about IDs. And that is a rough situation. Because again, Unseen can call in IDs and Thanos can still call in IDs. So if you are even going to go with the perplex option, I would even argue that you would need Sheriff Strange because you need to limit how much of the ID as a solution your opponent can use. Having IDs as a solution is just realistically super strong for Thanos and covers up for his apparent weakness in this situation. Again, barrier, 4-point barrier stops Thanos from calling in IDs, just period. So that is something that you might want to consider is combining the perplex option with the barrier. Those are things that can be done. The problem is you have to trying to cage Unseen is impossible unless Unseen is double tokened. And making the Unseen sort of just run for no reason is also bad because, again, Unseen is dropping down Smoke Cloud. So your ability to get that contain off again, that turn 2, is impossible if Unseen moved. Like, if the person knows what they're doing after seeing what you just did, yeah, you're in a bad spot. So there's also too is you want to make it so that that barrier option is really the best once you know your opponent has no more Cyclops IDs, or I don't think there's a Colossus that breaks through walls, but it may be. I don't know for sure. There may be one. I'm not 100%. So, yeah. Those are realistically all the options that I can see personally right now of how to deal with Thanos. Like I would even make the argument that map does matter, but going into map is a bit of a bigger problem because depending on your methodology, you may not be able to get map against Thanos. So that becomes an issue. But we do know, with Thanos teams, more than likely, they're not able to, go out there and, yank equipment and stuff like that. More than likely, they're not set up like that. So, and the ones that are feeding you a free Unseen. Yeah. So let's go over our solutions again and what they apply to. So there's a Nightbringer ring. That's primarily there only for your Power Cosmic and Quintessence characters. This is not for your standard characters that are not immune to Outwit, period. Because, you take a standard character, they go ahead, equip the Nightbringer ring, they run out there and they're like, I'm stealth, and Unseen's like, boop, no, you're not. And so then, yeah, you lost your team ability straight up. In your willpower and Power Cosmic, or you lost all your good stuff because Thanos can now perplex you and prepare for the suck. Banshee, Magneto, Iceman IDs for your Pulse Wave to deal with Unseen. Like, straight up, don't risk it. Definitely with the variations of Unseen having the Venom symbiote. Just don't play. Accept that it's a threat. Have those IDs. Force Blast being a reality to help you get Unseen into position for your Pulse Wave. Spin Ring as another potential positioning mechanic. Same thing with Influence Ring being your Yeet Force. I learned that word from Lucas. So yeah, that doesn't make me old dish now. Yeah. Anyway, then we have, like I said, perma barrier. You can do that with zero ring or with another barrier piece or two cheap barrier pieces. Those are options for you. Next up is the Outsiders team ability. I wrote Outlaws. The Outsiders team ability to limit down stat modification. Then Mr. Terrific, Sheriff Strange to hinder the access. The ability to call in a bunch of ID characters, and just the perplex options to perplex down Thanos' damage so that he can't really attack. So I know that I did not talk about Kobik Trader. And the main reason I didn't talk about Kobik Trader is that I feel that there are two teams right now that everyone is really looking at. One is Thanos, the other is Kobik Trader. You can make the argument that the Astronomer teams are sort of coming up because, yeah, like, who doesn't like Nick Fury? You know, like, you pay less for, you don't get the outwit, but you functionally have just about Nick Fury. Yeah, most people like that. And being able to run more than one on the cheap. Yeah, I think people like that. Anyway, the main reason I don't really bring up Kobik Trader is I feel that those teams are being refined and refined and refined that it doesn't matter anymore. They are going to be at the pinnacle of technology for heroclix going into Worlds. Kobik Trader and Thanos, Unseen. Those are going to be your top two mechanics that most people are going to be looking at, unless there's something in Regenesis and something in Star Trek that makes people say, you know, whoa, like, I think I can win Worlds with, you know, Jean-Luc Picard, you know, or Mirror Riker or whatever else, okay? And then I say that having not been able to see the entire set as of recording. So I know some of you be like, you know, what happened with post-production? Like, this came out on this day, Edward. Why didn't you know? And I'm like, I don't have far-reaching, you know, prophetic, you know, read HC Realms thread powers. And if I did, do you think I would be doing this podcast? I'd be at the boat, making money. Actually, I'd probably be at the boat, make my first bit of money, and then do stocks with my second bit of money, or make more money with my stock money. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would do. So, yeah, that's it. Anyway, so I hope that this has been useful. I know for some folks, if I have sort of come in and kicked your Chase Thanos from underneath you, you know, I know you're probably a little salty right now, but you know all the tricks that people can bring against you. So hopefully we can see, you know, potentially some evolution in Chase Thanos. Also, I gotta be honest, all the tactics that I present have some level of risk. They're not invincible tactics. Like, bad things can happen to you with all of these tactics. And you still have to deal with other matchups. So again, while a person can get hyper tailored to deal with, like, let's just say Chase Thanos, yo man, I there's nothing here that I have that really helps you deal with Kobik Trader directly. You could say, oh look, well, like I pulse waved that character, pulse wave Trader when the gym was when the cube was on Trader, and so yeah, that's how I won. I'm like, well, good for you, man. Good for you. But for the rest of us, that may not happen. So if you all want me to break down Kobik Trader, let me know. And I'm saying specific Kobik Trader and not like Kobik Collector, but specifically Kobik with Trader, not Kobik by itself and other jank, but Kobik and Trader. If so, put in the comments below or email me, and I'll do a show after I finish moving and other stuff, possibly, and upload it. More than likely, I may be at a library somewhere doing the research and then uploading it. Depends if my internet gets turned on or 15 other different factors. So, all right. Time to wrap up this show. You can follow me at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me, man, there's tyrants out here that you wouldn't believe, and they have wacky powers. Yep, that's it. There's nothing more special than that. It's not that entertainment. That not that entertaining. My Twitter came back. Hadn't had enough time and space. Before I was out there for like almost 2 weeks with nothing to do. It's been less than a week. It's doesn't have anything interesting. You can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. Again, what do you think of my assessment on how to defeat Chase Thanos, Ultra Chase Thanos? You can donate to the show at startingoverpodcast at go at startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com. If you go over there, there's a donate button, and everything that you donate helps keep the show up and functional. That's it for today. I'd really like to thank you all for listening. And remember, we all have